Okay, welcome to the third video for ISYS 110. This video we're going to be going through a lab exercise at the back of chapter 3. The exercise we're working on is called Year-to-Date Sales Analysis, and it's the doggy daycare file. I will be running through this fairly quickly as it's quite a long series of questions which covers a lot of complex topics and concepts, so if you do need to you may need to pause this video to keep up, or at least so you can understand what's going on, but that's okay. That's why I'm doing these videos, so it's a bit easier for you. Okay, so we've got this file open, and the first thing it wants us to do is zoom in and out, or at least zoom to a point so that we can see the files. I've got a large screen so I can see everything, but I'll just show you anyway. Down here in the bottom left or bottom right hand corner, you can zoom in and you can zoom out to get everything to fit on the screen. Okay, so that'll do for the moment. It also wants us to correct any errors. You can see here that there is one particular error, and it's just that there's a typo. Let's remove the D and hit enter. Now that we've corrected those errors, it now wants to save the workbook, and it wants to call it doggy daycare. Excellent. Okay, now it wants us to enter a formula into the cells at H9 and H10 and calculate those totals. So I'm just going to go into H9, go into the function, and select sum, click enter, and then use the fill handle to fill out the rest. It's now asking us to enter a formula into the cell B12. So we go to B12. It wants us to calculate the total income for January from daycare services, and the formula we're entering here is in the book, so just type it in as it's seen in the book. So it's B6 times by $B $32. I'll discuss that in a moment, what that is. And again, B7 times by B33. Now you can see here that it's multiplying this figure by this figure down here, and then this figure by this figure. The B6 and B7 cells are relative, that's these two, so they will move respective to the formula. So if we drag the formula across, the cell referencing will move across with it. The same cannot be said with this reference here, which is an absolute reference. The absolute references down the bottom here mean that no matter where the formula moves, the cell referencing will always point to that particular cell, in this case B32 and B33. So when we hit enter, that'll perform a calculation. Now you'll notice here that this total income refers to these two relative cells multiplied by these two absolute cells. When we copy the formula across using the fill handle, you'll notice that these cells references will move across to this cell here. However, the absolute reference will always point to this reference cell here down the bottom. So let's drag it across, and you'll see now the cell references have moved relative to the equation. However, the absolute cells have stayed the same. This is something that you will need to use or need to understand for the exam, so I hope that it makes it a little bit clearer for you. We'll just drag that across, and you'll notice now that, just to clarify it again, the equation in G12 has a relative reference which has now moved all across with it, all the way across to G6, but the absolute references have not moved. Okay, it now wants us to enter the totals into these columns, so I'm just going to use a function, use the sum function. Hit enter, and then copy the formula down using the fill handle. Once we've done that, it tells us to go to H16. And it wants us to calculate the total expenses. So again, I'm just going to use the sum function, hit enter, and then use this fill handle to fill that all the way down to row 29. Next part of the question is to use a formula, not a function, that calculates the total income. Now we all know that net income is the total of your income minus your total of your expenses. So we'll enter a formula, we'll type in the equals sign, click on total income, minus total expenses, and hit enter. We'll use the fill handle and drag that all the way across. It's now asking us to enter a new column with the heading of average. Wants us to copy the formatting. Okay, in this case, just using the fill handle because it's quite easy. In this instance here, I'm going to copy the fill handle, but click on the autofill options and change it to fill formatting. So it'll only fill the formatting across, not the values inside the cells. Formatting only. We're almost there. Use the fill handle and drag it down. Okay. Alright, now that we've got the heading, it's wanting us to enter a formula to calculate the average number of days. Now, I'm just going to use a function in this case. So we select the average. We select January to June. Don't include the total because that won't. That'll throw out the average. Hit enter. And drag it all the way down. I'm going to delete any of the errors that come up with dividing by 0. And I'm just going to fix that formatting error there. Okay, so it's now telling us to select from cell 1A all the way down to I30. So let's select that. Wants us to copy it, and it wants us to copy it into sheet number 2. You notice when we copy it, it doesn't maintain the width of the columns. That's okay. So we just go to paste, paste special, and choose column width. Click OK, and that should fix the problem. There are a couple of minor problems here with the heights, but it's not too much of a concern, and we've covered how to change heights in previous videos and also in class. But in any case, if you want to change the row height, just select row height and you can enter it manually. I might just manually do that by eye just to make it look like a bit nicer. There we go, that looks a bit better. And that'll do. It's now wanting us to rename sheet 2. So we'll just right click on sheet 2, select rename. And it wants us to call this July -December, or DEC, December. Hit enter. Once us to add colors to both of these, just right click on the sheet, change the color I'm just going to make it simple. One make red, we'll make one red, and make the other one blue. In sheet 2, we're to change this title, and we'll make it July through December. Hit enter. And we're going to change the month headings here too. So let's make it JUL for July. And then if we use the fill handle, it should automatically select that for us. It'll basically change the month because it recognizes the formatting we've used, and we'll copy across the respective months in order. It now wants us to adjust the cell referencing in rows 12 and 13, here and here. Because you'll notice that these are referring to cells that don't exist in this sheet. So what we're going to need to do is sheet referencing, which will refer to the values in sheet 1. So the way we do that is at the absolute references, which are the ones we want to change because they're referring to the values that were in sheet 1. Now in sheet 2 they're not there. Just put an abbreviated comma and then the sheet name. In this case it's Jan-June. Close the comma and then an exclamation mark. And again the same here. Oops, my apologies. I've made the same mistake twice. There we go. Hit enter. Now what you'll notice, similar to in sheet 1, these B6 and B7 references have remained relative, and in the sheet, however, the absolute references are now referring to cells in the first sheet, as per we've got here. So this means that these relative references in sheet 2 are going to be multiplied by whatever the dollar values are in sheet number 1. We hit enter. We should be able to copy across without any problems. And we should even be able to copy down. No. Okay, we won't be able to. That's okay. So we just do the same thing again. Abbreviated comma. Sheet name. $. And then the absolute reference to the cell, and the same again here. Hit enter. And use the fill handle. Just make sure that looks right. That does. Excellent.